Having come to the world's attention as the guitarist and songwriter for 90s mega power Creed, Mark Tremonti has since become somewhat of a critical darling with his post-grunge work with Alter Bridge, and more recently with his eponymous solo albums. Never much of a vocalist with Creed or on the earliest Alter Bridge stuff, he is coming to his own more and more with his singing in recent years, culminating in the release of The End Will Show Us How. But how good is it?
Brings me down, so a tale that tells a story I'll embrace inside.
The Mother the Earth and I begins the album, taking a moment to build tension before breaking out. As one would expect from a somewhat old school guitar god, the album comes screaming in with a flurry of thick, meaty riffs. In his lyrics, Mark ponders the scale of his own existence, comparing the fleeting human existence to the timeless planet from which we all are made. Tremonti's vocals here are really good, better than I expected to be quite honest. Not much space for the guitar work to shine just yet though. One More Time is more of a metal banger, coming in with a big crushing riff and featuring a devastating guitar solo around the 3-minute mark. A classic metal banger that delivers on the promise. Lyrically, this speaks to an approaching end for humanity, following nicely from the previous track. Just Too Much begins sounding a little bit like an old Nickelback track with a riff straight from the noughties, but it thickens out as the verses begin and my trepidations are put to rest. The quality of the production is stellar, and I have no complaints whatsoever about how this album sounds. This song isn't as good as the opening pair though. Nails sees Mark trying something different with his vocals, beginning deeper and ominous, something well within the wheelhouse of a crooner. Lyrically, it follows on from the previous track in talking of personal struggles and pain. The guitar solo on this track is the best yet, in part due to the aggressive riffing and drumming that accompanies it, adrenaline personified. The chorus is catchy as hell too. It's Not Over as track 5 is prime spot for our first ballad of the record, and this quieter beginning is welcome after the heaviest track so far. Well structured and paced, this track builds to a satisfying crescendo. This one has a lot more feeling than the rest of the tracks, and is therefore the most impressive vocally. This could easily have fallen flat, but Mark carries this off really well. The title track follows this ballad, also beginning slowly, the second longest track on the album at just under 6 minutes. You can hear it now, and despite me talking all over it, it should come through how stellar this track is. Worth every second of its runtime, speaking of hope and joy in life and sonically representing that sentiment wonderfully. The standout moment of the album and a worthy lead single and title track. Tomorrow We Will Fall possibly suffers from following the best song on the album, feeling a little small and underwritten by comparison, but it's not a bad song. Once it gets going, it has a lot of energy. It just feels like perhaps an inevitable drop after the excellent start this album had. I'll Take My Chances opens with a big killer riff that drops out and leaves the bass to crunch along the ground as the vocal comes in, only for the guitar to rejoin and soar overhead. The opening 45 seconds of this song sold me completely. It didn't matter what happened in the other 3 minutes and change, and what did happen in those minutes was one of the best tracks on this record. The bottom almost feels Biffy-esque in its opening passages, colour me intrigued. The chorus riff feels like what the Scots would write if they were to write a heavier track too, complete with the vocal harmonies I've come to expect from the Kilmarnock trio. This track feels slightly off-kilter in a really enjoyable way. I had worried that Tomorrow We Will Fall would signal the start of a poor end to this album, but the last 2 tracks have been great. Live in Fear almost feels like a metalcore song at the start. It's so syncopated and heavy. The musical variety in this album is fantastic to listen to and flows so nicely. Lyrical variance not so much, but I don't find myself caring at all. The music is what carries this, and the vocals are excellent for the most part. This is the heaviest track so far, and at times sounds more like what I expect to hear on next month's Architects release. The album is consistently surprising me and surpassing my expectations. Now that I've made it, feels like a track that could have been on the first Alter Bridge record, but was left on the cutting room floor. It's not a bad song, but it's not as good as the ones that have preceded it. But after this many great tracks in a row, I don't mind one that is merely okay. It won't hurt my final score too much. All the Wicked Things is our closer, and as the longest track, I anticipated either a grand finale or a song of 2 halves that ended with something fittingly genre-bending. We begin slowly with what I'm fairly certain is a synth, could be guitar, before the band comes in from nowhere and immediately riffing hard. And I have to say, this is the first song on the album that felt a bit long, although the guitar solo that ends the album goes a long way towards making up for that. So with only 3 weaker tracks that weren't even bad, leaving 9 tracks that are at least good, including a few that are great, this album is a triumph. If you prefer your artist to stay in their lane, this album isn't for you, as I feel this is Mark Tremonti trying out all the different styles and genres that he enjoys listening to, leaving an album that feels a little disjointed at times, but in a way that I, a person who listens to a broad spectrum of rock and metal, really enjoyed. I'd give this an 8 out of 10 and definitely recommend it. I'll hopefully be doing more reviews like this on the channel, so comment with any new releases you think I should cover. I've been Royston Reviews Tremonti, and until the future, drive safe.